Usual, Jin Wook was never absent to visit a popular pub in the city. Almost every night, he enjoyed himself in that place. Even his name was well known among the female bar workers. A woman with glasses and tied hair came into the same bar with him. Unlike him, she entered the bar in a bad mood. Evidently, she attended the bar after being invited by a friend. The atmosphere became much livelier when a man arrived to perform a hit song. That night turned out to be quite lovely for pub customers, but not for Yumi, who looked even worse as she tried to dance. The following day, while Jin Wook was swimming, his father called him to come to his office. His father was furious at him when he learned what his only son had done in the bar the last night. The sole heir of a well-known and largest firm in the city was involved in many scandals with a woman he just met in a bar. Therefore, his father was no longer interested in anything Jin Wook said. He was sent immediately to one of his resorts to start learning about the business right away. On the same day, without further ado, one of Chairman Cha's right-hand men took Jin Wook to the bus stop where he would catch a ride to the resort his father had mentioned. Instead of getting better transportation, his father's anger made things hard for him in the real world. Surprisingly, the girl with glasses from the same bar last night, Yumi, had the same destination that day. Jin Wook's day was a lot worse when he showed a lot of carelessness at the meeting, which made him very angry. After a few hours, they arrived at a beautiful resort. Jin Wook walked arrogantly and confidently into the resort owned by his father. Woo Jin was already waiting for him in the resort. He was informed by Chairman Cha to give his son lessons. After explaining some things, Jin Wook decided to follow the order. Even though he owned the resort, he had to work as a waiter. He had to keep following all of the resort's rules, despite the fact he was the son of the resort's owner. Although Jin Wook was dressed as a maid, he hadn't done his job. He was just relaxing and playing with his gadget until a resort manager told him that he would tell Chairman Cha about everything he has done. The threat clearly worked very well to get him to get up and do some of his jobs. At the same resort, Yumi met her mother, who was holding her third wedding party. She was compelled to attend the celebration and dressed as the maid of honor. The party was sufficiently festive, made some guests feel jealous. Meanwhile, Yumi felt ashamed of her mother's behavior, which was considered inappropriate for her age. She decided to leave the party, and that was where she met Jin Wook. As she fled the party, she bumped into Jin Wook, who was carrying a wedding cake for her mother. On the resort manager's orders, Jin Wook returned to Yumin's room and apologized. Then a commotion happened when Yumi slipped in the bathroom and spilled the wine she was going to drink. When Jin Wook returned to her room to get his car keys, he mistook the red smear on the bathroom floor for her blood. However, Yumi was so embarrassed that she decided to keep silent while she was carried to the ambulance. After he heard that Yumi was okay, he hurriedly left her and went to deliver flowers to someone who was celebrating a birthday at the moment. Afterwards, Yumi enjoyed herself, as Jin Wook had advised. She explored the resort on foot and scouted the coastline. After a while, she was sitting in front of the men market when Jin Wook passed her and gave her a ride. During the trip, they remained silent and awkward with one another. Then, Jin Wook took her to a beach and asked her to have a bottle of wine with him. They got carried away till Yumi awoke naked in the car the next morning. Jin Wook was doing very well at his father's company 3 years later. Yumi, meantime, had an internship and has been hired as a nutritionist at a dayboat company. The following day, Yumi began her first day of work at the organization. The first time Jin Wook recognized her was in an elevator. Yumi, who did not see him, directly went to the nutrition room and had the first day where she did not get the assistance and warmth of the chef and her coworkers. Several days later, Jin Wook lost consciousness at a business meeting. He overexerted himself and worked too hard, without taking care of his nutrition. Secretary Jiang would resign if he did not comply what he said. Director Che was compelled to follow all regulations, including eating 3 times every day. Then Secretary Jiang contacted the nutritionist. Yumi met him and accepted the offers to give Director Cha healthy meals for the following 2 months. Yumi took her job seriously without knowing who Director Che was. Despite multiple rejections she got, she continued to keep trying to make best nutritious dishes according to the book's cooking requirements. One day, when she was so angry that she accidentally sent a short message meant for her friend to Director Cha instead. She ran down the office hallway as fast as she could to see him and apologize in person. She finally knew who Director Che was. Time stopped when Yumi saw the real Director Cha. It turned out he was the person she had been with in her one-night stand a few years ago. She decided to return to her room because she was so shocked. After the second meeting, the day was getting harder as Director Che gave her more lessons. A few years back, she embarrassed him by leaving him alone in the car while he was naked and with the car door open. This time, Director Che requested Yumi to deliver the food directly to him. Director Che tried to remind her of the incident at the time. One day, Jin-wook decided to work overtime in order to spend the night at the workplace, and he attempted to remind Yumi about the incident because she still refused to recognize him. After completing her shift as a cook, she was extremely frustrated and requested a job transfer, but it was rejected. After that evening, Director Che began to eat all the prepared meals. Yumi, however, did not breathe a sigh of relief and instead thought more critically of him. Even when the renowned presenter Hae-ri visited Jin-wook at his workplace, she felt a twinge of jealousy. The following day, Hae-ri observed Yumi delivering food to her loved one. She decided to send Yumi all the special ingredients and tableware for Jin-wook. Jin-wook entered the nutrition room at the same time as Hae-ri asked a specific question to Yumi and made several requests. He then rejected all of Hae-ri's requests and asked her to stop giving Yumi orders. While hunting Yumi in front of her, he stated that no one but himself should give her orders because Yumi was his personal nutritionist. Obviously, Hae-ri was upset by what Jin-wook did. Yumi's co-workers seemed happy that she beat Hae-ri. Even so, Jin-wook took Yumi to a restaurant and invited her to have lunch with him. He proudly said that she was brought to that restaurant so that Yumi could cook, as well as the restaurant's chefs. That evening, Jin-wook recalled Director Meng's plan. Even though he did not know why, he simply did not want Yumi to leave. Then he smiled as he opened the jewelry box he usually kept, which has something quite intimate belonging to Yumi. The photograph he took while still at the resort. Immediately, he remembered the memories that made him angry. He felt like he had to get even for any shame he got because Yumi had put him in a particularly embarrassing situation. The following day, Director Meng devised a plan to get rid of Yumi and assigned a friend to fill the nutritionist position at Daebak. Additionally, he invited the executive staff and Director Cha to a food inspection. Obviously, this surprised the kitchen staff, but luckily Yumi was fast to react to the entrance of these executives, and with a menu of minced pork, the executives were sufficiently impressed that Director Meng gave up on the plan, especially after Jin-wook implied that he should not care for the kitchen staff. A few days later, Jin-wook was extremely busy, had a meeting with his colleagues. Yumi's job as a food provider was reduced for his seldom presence at the office. This was enough for her to breathe a sigh of relief, but it didn't look like it would last for long. Even though Jin-wook had eaten a lot of his co-workers' dishes, he still felt that something was missing. Secretary Jin casually asked him if he wanted to have some plain office food. Unexpectedly, Jin-wook immediately called Yumi and requested her to cook at his house. Yumi was upset. Why she still required complete tasks on weekend, even though her mother was nowhere to be found at the time, which left Dong-gu alone. Consequently, she had to bring him to Jin-wook's house. When she arrived, she took a look around the area of the house and saw several empty rooms. After a while, she began cooking after looking for the kitchen, and just as she was looking for pepper to add to the meal, she heard a noise. Indeed, her brother was playing in Jin-wook's office and breaking a jewelry box that looked expensive. Yu was frightened and decided to go home immediately. However, when she was home, she could not stop thinking about the issue, which made her panicked. Meanwhile, Jin-wook seemed disappointed to find Yumi was no longer at his home. He wished he could enjoy the meal together with Yumi, even he had prepared drinks as well. The following day, Yumi garnished the food that will be served to Jin-wook with various shapes of characters. Jin-mi and the others became suspicious while wondering if there was something wrong. It was actually true. She made it because she was reminded of the mistake her brother had made. On the other side, Jin-wook thought it was awkward that his food was shaped in some characters. When he rebuked Yumi, she apologized again as if she had committed a huge mistake. Obviously, this made Jin-wook felt weird. On the other hand, Hae-ri seemed delivering homemade food to Jin-wook's father to get more attention. Chairman Cho was so pleased to see her that he smiled widely. Although the food did not taste good, Chairman Cha, who supported her relationship with Jin-wook, kept giving the compliment on her efforts. Hae-ri attempted to provoke him at that time by saying that Jin-wook would rather eat the nutritionist's meals in his office than her own cooking. Obviously, this made Chairman Cha curious about the food prepared by the nutritionist. A few moments later, Jin-wook arrived, and his father conveyed his wish that he could soon have a grandchild. Hae-ri blushed as well, but Jin-wook explained that he did not need to marry someone who cooked for him. Then he left the room without saying anything else. It was in the evening when Jin-wook also returned home. He was tired that he sat in his workspace. He was surprised to find that his jewelry box had been broken. He instantly panicked, wondering if it was Yumi who had broken it. Did Yumi see something inside it as well? His fear drove him crazy that he couldn't sleep that night. The next day, Yumi, who seemed worried because she broke Jin-wook's jewelry box, left the food to Secretary Jang so that he could give it to Jin-wook. At the same time, Jeannie ran into her as she was about to go into the nutrition room. Then, she tried to tell her how cute she looked in the polka dot dress she had worn before. Jeannie also proudly got her phone number. Secretary Jang was weak and fell in love with her. The food that Yumi had given was then brought by Secretary Jang to Jin-wook. When Jin-wook opened it and read the note inside, Jin-wook was very angry that he asked Secretary Jang to bring it back. Jin-wook still thought about what was written on his food box when he got home. Because of that, he was very worried about what would happen if Yumi saw what was inside. It would, of course, hurt his reputation. Jin-wook could no longer take it, so he called Yumi and asked her to see him. When she said no, he quickly ran to her home with a stuffed bunny he found under the table. It made him strongly believe that Yumi had seen what inside the jewelry box was something he had kept for 3 years. After a while, Jin-wook got to Yumi's apartment. When he saw her, Jin-wook made sure to ask if she had seen what was in the jewelry box she had broken. The funny thing was, Yumi thought she saw it. What she meant was she saw the necklace on Hairi's neck because she was sure that the necklace was in the box. Yumi thought the size was too small, that it should be bigger so that it could be used comfortably, meaning the necklace. At the same time, Jin-wook immediately thought about the falsies, which made him panicked and angry even more. Yun-tae, who didn't like it when other people scold his friend, suddenly came out and hugged Yumi right away. Yun-tae gave Jin-wook an unfriendly look. Yun-tae then told Jin-wook to leave because working stuff had to be done at work as well. He left, not knowing what would happen. However, he could not stop thinking about Yumi and the man. When she delivered food the next day, Jin-wook returned her brother's stuffed bunny. Then, Yumi gave him a new box for his jewelry, but he got mad and told Yumi to stop talking about it. Before Yumi went back to her room, he asked the man who had hugged her the night before and if he was her boyfriend. Yumi also refused to answer. After he realized that Yumi wouldn't answer, he said that she has bad taste in choosing a partner. Moreover, Jin-wook also said Yun-tae was a bad person. Yumi couldn't stand to hear her best friend being insulted, so she said that Yun-tae was a kind and handsome man. Not only that, but Yun-tae was also not like most other men. Yumi's answer immediately stirred Jin-wook's feeling. A few moments later, Jin-wook and Secretary Jang walked together to the meeting room. He accidentally saw Secretary Jang carrying a book that he planned to read while he was waiting. He picked up the book and looked at it, but it had a big picture of Yun-tae on the cover. That made him feel even worse, and he remembered how Yumi praised him. He threw the book away and said he would go back to work after meeting. When Yumi knew her boss would like to eat at work, Yumi had no idea what menu will be served, and because Jin-wook just wanted to make her mad, he asked for another meal and made Yumi work late into the night. Yumi couldn't refuse it, so she made him food again. When he found out that Yun-tae would pick up Yumi, he asked for another meal and asked Yumi to accompany him. Although she was upset, Yumi couldn't refuse it. Yumi had no choice but to accompany him. On the other hand, Yun-tae seemed annoyed, for he knew that Yumi's boss has been treating her this way all along, but he hasn't been able to protect his best friend yet. He felt bad about it. The next day, Secretary Jang said that Chairman Cha told him to set up a TV interview for Jin-wook and that this was also for his promotion. As he was getting ready to go to the interview, he overheard Yumi on the phone. Then he told Secretary Jang to tell the nutritionist to cook for both the TV crew and the people at the meeting in the evening. Yumi got her own food and brought them to the TV studio. She saw Hairi and Jin-wook having the interview. Hairi asked Jin-wook a few questions about his success, and then she asked him a slightly more personal and open-ended question about what he thought of her. But since the time was up, the interview had to end. One of the crew members suddenly yelled that the food was coming, but it turned out that Hairi had ordered food for the crew. It looked like she didn't want to eat the food from Yumi. Jin-wook then went after Yumi, who looked disappointed. Yumi apologized to Jin-wook, whom she thought would propose Hairi in the interview. It definitely made Jin-wook confused. It was getting dark, and the workers were getting ready to go home. But all of a sudden, Secretary Jang called Yumi and told her that Director Che was sick, and she needed to go to the hospital right away. Yumi then went to the hospital to see Jin-wook. She asked him if any of this had to do with her. Secretary Jang said that of course there was. It was because he and Jin-wook ate a lot of food last night that Yumi made. Jin-wook got sick right away. Yumi felt touched because everyone picked the food that Hairi ordered that night. Jinwook teased Yumi at the time by asking if she didn't have a date with Yeontae today. Yumi said Yeontae was her best friend, not her boyfriend. They also didn't live in the same house, but Yeontae had a cafe on the first floor while she lived on the second floor. The other way around, Jinwook said that she misunderstood what the jewelry box she broke was for. The next day, Jinwook called Yumi and told her he would punish her by eating together with him 10 times. In exchange for the broken jewelry box, she surely had no choice but to accept it. At night, they start eating together. Yumi picked a restaurant with good food and a good chef, but there were always things inside that were meant to make Yumi feel bad. After a few days, Jinwook called her again and asked her to go to dinner with him. When he got to the restaurant, Jinwook showed his business card that said he was the owner of Daebok, so that could get him right to the front of the line. Even so, it did not work, so he tried to give a tip to a restaurant worker, but Yumi pulled him and forbade him to do something embarrassing. After eating, they also played in the garden. Yumi got nervous when Jinwook tied her shoes. Even this moment was still in her mind until she got home. On the other hand, Hyori seemed discussing with her team. Her coworkers said they would love to interview the writer Yeontae, but it might be hard to do so. Hyori looked at the picture and thought she knew the man, but she couldn't clearly remember it. Then her coworker asked Hyori for help managing Yeontae. Hyori smiled and said that she would be able to invite Yeontae to their event, just like she did with Jinwook. Hyori called Yeontae, introduced herself, and asked him to work with her. Yeontae apologized and declined the offer because he didn't like being on TV. Hyori looked angry after turning off her phone. Yeontae was with his friends at the time that seemed interested in figuring out who had called him. When they find out that it was Hyori, their friends showed him a picture of the famous presenter. Yumi was making food for Jinwook, and it was time to add the eggs. She got help from the head chef, who showed her how to make it. He also gave Yumi some hand cream. It seemed like the head chef liked Yumi, that initially was very curtly and firm. Yumi also delivered the food and told him she would eat with him. Unexpectedly, Jinwook told Yumi at that time that she no longer had to cook for him. Jinwook then asked her out to dinner, but Yumi refused it because she had already made an appointment before he made a reservation. Yumi then asked him to talk about the day before he chose the restaurant. This time was different because Jinwook did what she asked. Then Jinwook asked Jung's secretary to call the restaurant and cancel the reservation. Secretary Jung said it was hard to make reservations at restaurants. Secretary Jung complained that Jinwook should make sure before having a date. Jinwook said right away that it wasn't a date, but a business meeting because Yumi owed him money. Yumi accidentally heard what he said, which was why, in the end, she told Jinwook that they should have dinner together because she had broken her promise and wanted to pay off her responsibility quickly. Since they couldn't go to the restaurant, Jinwook took Yumi back to his apartment and cooked for her. Jinwook said that Yumi was the first woman he brought to his house. When he was done cooking, Jinwook asked Yumi to bring 2 plates for him and her. At that moment, Jinwook came up to Yumi and gave her a sweet kiss, and he said this was just a starter. It looked like Yumi was still shocked that Jinwook kissed her out of nowhere. The bell rang at the same time. Jinwook was very surprised when his father came to see him the same night as he was with Yumi. Jinwook gave his father the food that was meant for Yumi. On the other hand, Yumi hid in his workspace. His dad was a little suspicious when he saw that his son got nervous and that there were 2 candles on the table. When he heard a noise coming from above the house, his father became more suspicious. Yumi screamed because she was surprised to find her breast pads in the jewelry box that she had broken before. Before his father tried to check, Jinwook told him to stay and that he would check it himself. However, Jinwook's father stayed behind him because he thought Jinwook was hiding a girl. Fortunately, Jinwook's cat was also in that room that he could use it as an excuse. The following day, Chairman Cha instructed Director Kim to figure out Jinwook's girlfriend. Meanwhile, Jinwook asked Yumi to be the personal nutritionist of a foreign investor. If she could make her feel comfortable here, it would help his product's sustainability in foreign markets. Hyori decided to go to Yeontae's house and convince him to be a guest speaker on the TV show, but Yeontae rejected it because he really didn't want to become more famous. Yeontae talked about how Hyori offered to be a guest speaker that night. Yumi told Yeontae that if he accepted it, it would make him famous. Yumi tripped while playing, but Yeontae quickly caught her and gave her a hug. Yeontae's behavior at that moment was enough to make Yumi feel awkward. So did Yeontae, who felt tight in his chest. The next day, Jinwook picked up Yumi, and he was amazed to see that she looked the same as she did 3 years ago. Finally, they got to the resort, which was full of memories. Yumi, who was introduced as his personal nutritionist, made a big impression on the foreign investors when they met her. It looked like this trick really helped him get the employment contract. The investors also enjoyed the food served by Yumi. After dinner, Yumi went back to her room. She was surprised to find a package with a dress in front of her door. That was written on the card inside it that Jin-wook requested her to wear the dress and join him for dinner. Yumi's appearance that night was enough to captivate him. On the other hand, Hae-ri searched for more information about Yumi, so she went back to see Yuntae. But when they find out that Yumi was with Jin-wook on a business trip, they were both angry and jealous. While drinking together, they finally got carried away and talked about themselves. The next day at the resort, contracts were signed with investors from other countries. Jin-wook told Secretary Jang to go back to the office first. Then he took Yumi to the pool and asked her to swim with him in case he got cramps while swimming. Yumi felt uncomfortable that she wanted to leave him alone, but she was shocked when she saw Jin-wook floating in the water. She asked for help. However, behind her back, Jin-wook secretly told them to leave. Yumi, who was worried, talked and told her feelings. When Jin-wook woke up, they told stories and talked to each other. Yumi finally kissed Jin-wook on the cheek. Then, they both kissed each other. After that occurrence, they acted the way they were and they stopped hiding their feeling for one another. One time, Jin-wook was about to take Yumi out to dinner, but Yumi said no because Dong-gu's birthday was coming up. As night fell, Dong-gu's simple birthday party began. Soon after, Jin-wook came and made Yumi felt uncomfortable, so she hurried her mother and Dong-gu into the room first. On the other hand, Jin-wook and Yuntae were at the cafe. They both, who were drinking together, turned out to be so drunk that Jin-wook had to stay at Yumi's apartment. Yumi had something to do in the morning that she left food for Jin-wook. It seemed like her mother also had an appointment that she gave Dong-gu to Jin-wook with a little bit of pressure. He sadly took care of him and played with him. Meanwhile, Chairman Cha looked for more information about Yumi until she came to her apartment. As his father was about to get there, he stopped in a field near the cafe. He saw his son playing with a little child. It was getting dark, and Yumi finished her training, and she was surprised to see Jin-wook was still in her apartment with Dong-gu. Jin-wook went back to his apartment after kissing Yumi's lips. On the following day, Jin-wook was in a meeting where he brought up the idea to make kids' product inspired by Dong-gu. Then he took a call from his father, who wanted to know his relationship with the nutritionist. His dad asked if the child with him was his daughter. Jin-wook remained silent though, and his father asked again if the child was Yumi's. Jin-wook took Yumi out with him because he was so worried about her. He wanted her to tell him everything that happened 3 years ago. Then Yumi talked about how she had felt. Jin-wook turned to be so gentle after hearing all of Yumi's heart's feelings. Something surprising happened on the next day. Jin-wook made her a special room and set it up in a certain way. When Jin-wook went to a meeting to present his new product, Chairman Chow went to the cafeteria to see Yumi and told her that she had to break up with Jin-wook. The things that Chairman Cha said made Yumi sad. They were stuck in her head, even though she was with Jin-wook at the time. Jin-wook seemed to like Dong-gu so much that he thought he was his son. He kept being kind and told Yumi that she would never be alone again. Things got even more complicated because Yumi was really in love with him. At the same time, she bumped into Hae-ri, who was drunk. She said things that hurt her a lot.
이런 걸 꿈꾸셨어요, 설마? 아니, 그게 부침개 뒤집듯이 막 아팠다 뒤졌다.
Hae-ri decided to see Jin-wook. She told him how desperate she was that he hasn't accepted her love in 10 years. However, Jin-wook told her to leave instead. Chairman Cho was still very curious that he decided to go to see Dong-gu. Then he just grabbed Dong-gu's hair, which made Yumi's mother angry. The two of them argued until Jin-wook showed up after Yumi came to her mother. They stopped fighting when her mother yelled that Dong-gu was her son. Chairman Cha then left the cafe, and Yumi told Jin-wook to leave when she realized that he had been acting that way because he thought Dong-gu was their son. Hae-ri also seemed to have brought up the news of one-night stand between Yumi and Jin-wook. The rumors widely spread, and this made Yumi feel very sad and kept herself away from Jin-wook. Secretary Jang also told Jin-wook to stop seeing her for a while so that Yumi didn't leave him, just like her mother. Yumi was getting more upset by the rumors. She was very sorry that she had to leave Daebuk and leave all her good memories there. She moved to another company. She felt suffocated as she said goodbye to Jin-wook. Her co-workers agreed to throw her a farewell party. When they sang together, Yumi seemed to enjoy the song she sang wholeheartedly. The day got harder after Yumi quitted her job at Daebuk. As usual, Secretary Jang reported the condition of the company to Jin-wook and ended with the location where Yumi was transferred. Even so, Jin-wook didn't look like he needed the information and asked him to bring some files that had piled up. On the other hand, Yumi has been going to a university in Daejeon. She worked hard there, and how busy the students were made her work harder to prepare the meals. As night fell, Yumi could finally relax and take a deep breath. She felt relieved when Yeon-tae came for visiting her. They spent the night telling stories to each other, but Yeon-tae looked at Yumi's eyes and saw sadness in her eyes. That night, Yeon-tae took the time to tell Yumi how he felt, how much he cared about her. Yumi gave him a hug and said she was sorry because she couldn't feel the same way. However, Jin-wook saw both of them at the same time and decided to go back without telling Yumi that he was coming. Jin-wook worked even harder and didn't care about his nutrition. Then, Hae-ri tried to call him, but he didn't answer right away, so she brought him some food so that Jin-wook could stay healthy. This time, Hae-ri was quieter than usual. She finally got it that she couldn't force her feelings to Jin-wook. At night, Hae-ri decided to get drunk and asked Yeon-tae to join her. Yumi thought that moving to the suburbs would make her life more peaceful, yet that wasn't true. She was embarrassed by the presence of her mother on a TV show. She unconsciously revealed everything that happened with her daughter and director Cha. She didn't even hesitate to say who Mr. C was in the scandal that was in the news recently. She surely felt bad and cried again. She would deal with more insults and get hurt. Secretary Jong, who had watched the video interview, told Jin-wook that he should go to Yumi right away and try to catch her. However, when he got to school, Yumi had already left her work without saying goodbye to anyone. Yumi actually went back to her mother and told her what happened. She decided to leave her mother alone after that.
에로 배우 딸로서 사는 게 얼마나 힘든 건지 엄마가 알기나 해? 야, 쟤네 엄마 에로 배우래?
Jin-wook, on the other hand, still had no idea where Yumi went, so he kept driving his car around aimlessly. He still wished he could find her soon. Jin-wook accidentally drove his car on a beach where he was used to be with Yumi. It turned out that Yumi had been there before Jin-wook did, and she met Jin-wook's mother. Even though they didn't know each other, Jin-wook's mother was very kind to her by making her abalone porridge and giving her a bike so she could get around. It seemed like the sky hadn't given the blessing. Jin-wook was moving to another side of the beach when Yumi went back to the beach. They both missed each other, yet they couldn't meet. Yumi stopped at a bus stop after going around the beach. The memories came back, and she accidentally found another coin. The coin kept moving, though, until a foot finally stepped on it. Jin-wook's feet. Jin-wook picked up the coin and scolded Yumi how hard it was to find Yumi. They hummed and said they missed each other. They walked around the beach, and Jin-wook told her he didn't avoid her all this time. He remained silent because he didn't want to lose her like he lost his mother. Both of them were very happy and laughed at each other. Just like a few years ago, they were alone in the car when it got dark. Jin-wook promised to stay with her and do everything with her. Then Jin-wook kissed her. Jin-wook fell asleep because he was so tired. Yumi realized that she couldn't be happy with Jin-wook because of the way things were. Then she gave him a kiss bye and left, and again, Jin-wook woke up alone the next morning. On the other hand, Yumi decided to go back to her apartment, even though it was snowing heavily. When she first met Yeon-tae, she cried in his arms. Jin-wook still hung out on the beach, and he didn't let go of the coin. Jin-wook went to his mother's house, and he didn't wait outside this time. He came into the restaurant his mother ran. Of course, it was a very nice surprise for her. Then his mother made him his favorite abalone porridge. Jin-wook ate the porridge with tears running down his cheeks. Then his mother told him that she had been with Yumi. She learned about Yumi from a magazine. His mother said that Yumi really loved him and wanted to make him abalone porridge. Meanwhile, when Yumi was in her apartment, she packed up all the things that reminded her of the past, but she kept her mom's hot book instead. That morning, Yumi's mother came back to be a guest on a TV show. Yumi didn't know that she wanted to make up for her mistakes. She told Yumi that no matter what other people said, she needed to stay strong and positive. During the live show, it was also said that Yumi had to keep up her love. Yeon-tae was also watching the show on TV. He gave Yumi his motorbike, and she rode quickly toward Daebuk. When Jin-wook got a message from Yumi, he rushed to the office. However, traffic was bad that he left his car and decided to run. When they got to Daebuk, They hugged each other. They didn't care the people around. Even Jin Wook kissed Yumi in public. Definitely, the news about them spread over many sites. Hairi was upset by the news, so she asked Yun Tae out for a drink. Yun Tae accepted, and on that occasion, he invited Hairi to go with him to America. A few moments later, his mother found a partner and wed for the third time. At this wedding, however, Yumi didn't run away. She was accompanied by Jin Wook. She looked calm and promised that her own wedding would be more beautiful. Finally, they tied the knot. Happy ending.